This podcast contains adult content and themes. For a full list of our content warnings, please see our show notes. Listener discretion is advised.
When your fears have taken their toll, when the demons have got out of control, when the shadows just won't leave you alone, I'll be there. When your rainbows have turned into black, when the sun has turned its back, when all of your power let itself dry, I'll be
Welcome, my dear traveler, to the Morbid Forest. Yes, Ranger Thompson was a character. Stubborn old goat. But you know what they say about old goats, like... Did you hear that? Come on. We need to move, now. Quickly. We're almost there. But we need to move, now. I don't want to deal with the Jackknife Man.
Several months ago, I looked out from an 8th-story window through a range-finding reticle. Brilliant electric light spilled across the busy 6-lane street below and onto the brick facade across the way. A grid of drab windows jetted from the edifice, but only one in particular held my interest. I don't often take such mundane jobs. I prefer a contract that allows me to take my time, get up close and personal, smell the panic-laden sweat as my mark realizes who I am and why I'm there. The joy of interrogation, the tang of blood, the stink of the aftermath. This time, though the pay was outstanding, and even the most accomplished artist is not immune to the effects of an extra zero, so a bullet was the order of the day. The kill was clean, or at least as clean as I could make it under the circumstances. The window illuminated from within at the expected time, a ceiling light highlighting my mark's glistening hairless dome at just the right angle, and my bullet rode in to meet the glare. A satisfying crimson spritz rewarded my efforts. My hands danced in a practiced rhythm, packing my equipment and preparing an exit, until something caught my eye in a neighboring window. A small figure behind the corner pane, jerking almost imperceptibly back and forth and holding something in its tiny hand. At the time, it made little sense that this figure should interest me, but I squinted at it all the same, unable to make out specifics in the dim light from the street. I considered unpacking my rifle and peering down the scope, but dismissed the idea as ridiculous. Schedules must be kept, plans executed in precise fashion. I exited the building, authorities none the wiser, and forgot all about the figure in the window. I completed 7 contracts before I saw the figure again. My assignment at the time had gotten a bit messy, and I needed to dispose of some collateral damage, namely 2 security guards with delusions of grandeur. Being the professional that I am, I had surmounted the obstacle, then taken it upon myself to clean up the mess. Remaining free of notice and suspicion proved a task of moderate difficulty, and sweat made a sticky mess of me. Pushing chunks of guard bagged up in an archaic rolling mail distribution crate, I will admit to being distracted by egotistic thoughts when I noticed movement at the bottom of a beaming light pole in the adjacent parking lot. The same figure from that window peeked out from behind a pyramid of light, lit from above at a distance. It called to mind a beardless version of a stereotypical leprechaun, though dressed in blacks rather than greens. It bobbed back and forth, fiddling with something in one hand, the object glinting like a faraway lighthouse beaconing a ship from sea. A chill shimmered up my spine, the kind that comes from the deepest part of your primal selves, before logic has a chance to intervene and explain away in terms of coincidence or presumption. A wind-up toy, perhaps? Who would have placed it? And in both locations? I shook off the distraction, relocated my cargo to the trunk of a modest sedan, then returned my gaze to the light pole. The figure was gone. I wake to use a restroom several nights later, navigating the short stretch of floor by the city light pouring through the window. My line of work necessitates steady nerves, but movement on the molding above my bathroom door startles me. On the tiny ledge sits the creature, for that's what it is, a man-shaped creature, not a toy. I blurt out an expletive, retreat to snatch up the pistol I keep in my nightstand, then approach in a practice stance. The dim light from the street does not reveal the creature in great detail, but a wide grin slashes across the better part of its face, as if some dark secret were caged within, begging for freedom. As I towed nearer to the bathroom door, pistol raised, I see what had glinted at me from beneath the parking lot light post. The creature holds a miniature jackknife in its hand. Opening, closing, opening again as its wielder thumbs the blade and rocks back and forth. I slide my finger to the trigger, and the infernal thing snaps a wink at me before vanishing from sight. I clap my eyes tight, shake my head, then stare dumbfounded at the blank wall above the doorframe. My thundering heart and jittering hands keep me from my bed. The situation with the jackknife-wielding creature grows more complexing and more disquieting with each occurrence. The creature appears larger with subsequent visits, large enough eventually to discern it's no leprechaun, but something resembling a man in a three-piece suit and a top hat. Ashen gray skin pulls too tight around its eyes and mouth. His nose, wide and sharp, beak-like. That unflinching grin remains, filled with thick and jagged yellow teeth. The Jackknife Man, as I have taken to call him, grows more brazen. He pops out from behind fruit stands during my provisional routine, in restroom mirrors as I tidy myself up before and after a job, in alleyways as I stroll the city streets, seeking relief from the madness that creeps up from the base of my skull and jumbles my thoughts. I toss and turn at night, sleep eluding me as I struggle to keep the Jackknife Man from my thoughts. Drenched in putrid sweat, I reach for the glass of water on my nightstand, only to find him grinning at me from the foot of my bed. I scream and scramble to grab my pistol, but he is gone before my sleep-addled mind can refocus. The rest of the night finds me sitting upright against the headboard, lights on, breath wheezing in shallow spurts, certain that the Jackknife Man's return is a matter of when, not if. After that night, my usual restful sleep is a relic of the past. That doesn't stop the Jackknife Man from visiting. He appears one evening as I close the refrigerator door and turn to heat up some leftover chicken bourguignon, which I promptly fumble the bowl and send spinning end over end to splatter across the cold tile floor. The Jackknife Man waits by the stove, now nearly matching me in height. He wears the same suit and top hat, his dark, wet lips peeling back to reveal a buttery grin, skin tugging at the corners of his mouth. His eyes, though, were fascinating specimens of heterochromia. One sky blue, one emerald green. Neither particularly disturbing when compared to the rest of his visage. Like his eyes, his hands were also mismatched. One pale-skinned and fiddling with the jackknife, one dark-skinned, both otherwise quite mundane. "What do you want from me?" My words squeeze out, raspy from a tense throat. The Jackknife Man grins, flicking his blade open and close a few times and swaying back and forth as if shifting his weight from foot to foot was the only thing keeping him from assailing me. I stand rigid, half for fear of prompting an attack, and half out of need to understand what the hell this creature's purpose might be in torturing me. He raises a fleshy, hairless eyebrow at me a couple of times, then vanishes in a blink. A faint odor, like sulfur-crusted spoiled meat, wafted through the kitchen in the wake of his departure. My shoulders dropped with relief, though curiosity leaves me somewhat disappointed. I puzzle over the creature and his knife, until a memory burst forth from a dry, dusty corner of my mind. My childhood is best forgotten. Destitution, neglect, and abuse were the hallmarks. I don't ask for pity, but it's important to understand just how much significance I drew from a few possessions I managed to squirrel away from myself. One such possession was a little folding knife. It sported 2 bands of mother-of-pearl at either end of an exquisite walnut handle. A jackknife. I had to steal it, of course, as purchasing such a treasure was beyond my means, and to ask my parents for just about anything resulted in a red stinging cheek, assuming they came out of their drug-induced stupor long enough to raise a hand. So steal it I did, and care for it, and adored it. It was my most prized possession. It likely saved my life once, and simultaneously claimed my first kill. I was digging for scraps in an alley behind a grimy diner one day when a drunk but sizable man ambushed me. Growing up dirt poor necessitates learning the more distressing facts of life at a young age, and so I knew what the particular man sought. I wasted no time in setting to work with my little treasure, and lived to scrounge another day. This encounter, and thus that pearl and a walnut knife, gave me the particular taste required to excel in my line of work. It is the same knife the Jackknife Man holds in his hand at each appearance. That realization sends a violent shiver through me, and becomes a flashing beacon for my thoughts in the dark hours, ruining what little sleep I had been able to steal of late. My work was the only aspect of my life that brought relief, though constant fatigue blurred my vision, shook my hands, and degraded my performance. When the call came for an exceptional job, I almost declined, but the burning need in me wore out. When I saw the job was exceptional, I mean that I had never taken one quite so demanding, nor so profitable. Only my pride needed the money. But the number of marks proved exceptionally more enticing than any number in my bank account. 13 targets in a single location. The prospect of this challenge excited me and distracted my thoughts from the Jackknife Man long enough to actually get a full night's sleep once again. I did the job, an exemplary performance by all metrics, a masterpiece even. There was no specific requirement for cleanliness, yet I slipped through the high rise like a whisper on the wind, dispatching each mark with dogged precision and skill, all except the last, from who I was to extract information. If there is one aspect of my work that ignites my passion beyond all others, it is the intimacy of persuasion. Everyone talks, eventually. But some possess such fortitude that it takes hours to reach a crescendo, building by degrees as I jab and cut and pull and rip my way into an ecstatic frenzy right alongside them. When the moment comes, the release is like none other in this mortal life, though it is quite the opposite for the subject of my performance. My final mark sits strapped to an office chair, head lolling, breath labored. Upon terminating him with a slow plunge of steel that draws a satisfying screech, a voice pierced the ensuing silence, breaking my blissful trance.
Bravo, bravo! An excellent show all around, and what a finish to boot!
I turn, knowing exactly who I will find. Despite never hearing his voice, The Jackknife Man grins at me from the doorway of the conference room I chose as my workspace. He was easily a hand taller than me at this appearance, and his movements were fluid, easy, real. No trace of the toy-like jerks and jiggles from the last few encounters. His presence is palpable this time, thick and oppressive, a weight that our previous encounter did not carry. A stench like boiled eggs and decay assaulted my nose. You again. It was all I could manage to get out of my stupefied mouth.
Me indeed.
He springs from the doorway and bows, pulling his hat to his chest to reveal a lumpy mass of bone, like the skin wouldn't quite fit over his deformed skull. That lunatic grin persists through his words, the flesh of the lower lip doing most of the work.
Fantastic job. Your efforts have not gone unnoticed. You should be proud of yourself.
He steps closer and sets his hat on one end of the long table spanning the room. I stand at the opposite end, wishing the table were longer. I yank the knife from my mark and find my nerve, the blade dripping from the gruesome finale just moments before. I eye the pistol on my tool case, which is halfway across the room between us. I curse my negligence. I don't know what you are, creature, but you would be wise to explain yourself. Why are you tormenting me? I check the jackknife in his hand, still flicking open, closed.
Ah, you've noticed my little trinket. Pray tell, what does it look like for you? I'm ever so curious.
I frown at that. Certainly this fiend carries an identical replica from my past to torment me. The actual knife has since been lost to time, due some hasty emergency or relocation. It couldn't be the same blade, could it? I peer at the Jackknife Man for a long moment, meeting his mismatched eyes, trying to discern the trick and sort out what I'm missing. He only grins back and cocks his gray, leathery head to the side, awaiting my reply. I try to sound confident, brandishing my bloody knife in my hand, but the quake in my gut comes out in my voice. I don't know what your game is, fiend, but you know full well what you hold. I suggest you put it away in that suit of yours before I put this one through you. I give the considerably larger knife in my hand another wave, the blood dripping down my glove adding a nice bit of bravado, bolstering my resolve.
A knife then, is it? How fitting.
He does not look at the jackknife, only locks his eyes onto mine. His pale hands thumb the blade in, out, in, out. You know it's my first knife, creature. Now tell me why. I point my blade at his hideous grinning face.
The very first, you say? Quaint. Perhaps it'll conjure fond memories before we proceed.
I don't like the sound of that. I fire off my questions, hoping one sticks. Proceed with what? Why have you grown in size? Why have you never spoken to me until now? What is the jackknife for? The creature laughs as he steps closer, sparing a glance from my out-of-reach pistol, as if daring me to try for it.
You wouldn't believe how difficult it is to get here, my friend, even with someone as prolific as yourself.
He takes a step closer, and I circle around behind the dead man in the chair, putting distance between us, my knife raised and ready. What do you mean, get here? You're some sort of, what, dimensional traveler? A demon?
Let's just say this last effort of yours, a tremendous accomplishment, no doubt about it. You should give yourself a great big pat on the back. Well, it was just a perfect shot of fuel to the fire. One that I needed to make the last big leap on over to join you.
His grin twists into a leer, and he pounces across the remaining distance with unnatural dexterity, a gray and black blur. Despite decades spent honing my reflexes and combat awareness, I am no match for the Jackknife Man. His arm shoots over the bloody corpse between us with such speed that I may as well have been drugged out of my mind for all the deftness I'm able to muster in response. The dark-skinned hand seizes my shoulder, and I lose all ability to control my body. There's no other way to describe the sensation. To say I froze would be inaccurate. My body was not mine to command, save my eyes and my hands below the wrist. for all the good it did. My arms drop, my legs stiffening against my will. I clutch the knife and beg my arms to strike, but the Jackknife Man's spell holds me fast. The sleeve of his suit pulls back from the hand binding me, revealing an arm wrapped in gray skin similar to the creature's face. It wrinkles up against the darker skin of his hand in lean rolls, oozing syrupy ichor at the junction. Nausea turns my stomach, and I can't bend or sit to find any relief.
Now,
He said.
we begin.
He raises the jackknife.
This may look like a knife to you, but I assure you it's not. It is a key.
And with that, he plunges the jackknife directly between my eyes. The next memory I have is of standing in an alleyway behind a brick building. The acrid stink of a dumpster assaulting my nose. Something about the place strikes me as familiar. A kid digs through the refuse before me, and I approach, though not of my own volition. A vile heat courses through my blood, the sour stench of alcohol coating my breath. My hands reach out for the child, but I am unable to pull them back. The kid turns and springs away from my wobbling attempt to grapple. Recognition hits me. Had I the capacity to grasp or widen my eyes in disbelief, I would. The child is me, as I was so many years ago before. A disheveled street urchin with hard eyes and a sharp mouth, and something even sharper in my hand. My younger self strikes in a flash, conjuring the familiar jackknife with streaking sleight of hand and puncturing my abdomen several times before I can react. Hot agony radiates from the wound, my body clutching at the wetness and pain with both hands. The knife comes again, this time across my throat. Another slash of pain, a gout of crimson. I try to gasp for breath, bubbling thick globs of blood into my lungs and choking on my remaining vitality. I fall to the asphalt, ripping my skin from my palms. Breathless pain streaks my chest, and I struggle for air as my vision closes black from the edge. Until I know no more. I wake up in a bathroom. A light shines bright above a marble basin. An assortment of soaps, lotions, and perfumes adorn a shelf beside a touchless paper towel dispenser. A hazy fog slurs my thoughts, disrupting my balance. I remember everything that happened in that alleyway just before. When my eyes finally fall to the mirror, it's not myself I see, but a young man with a dark crew cut and a fluid nose, sporting a bright purple shirt with a crisp collar, the top 2 buttons opened, a tuft of chest hair exposed. The man I inhabit dips his face down to reveal a straw and a crushed pill beside a glass. His hand reaches for the straw, and then my head explodes with bright pain. I topple, my nose cracking on the countertop. Someone drags me across the tile and into a stall. I look up from the floor to see myself, barely an adult, before my young fist strikes again. The beating lasts minutes but seems an hour. My ribs crack, tissue tears behind my jaw and swells below my ear. My eye socket thickening with blood and sealing shut. Pain and fear overwhelm my thoughts, the unidentified drug in my system doing little to alleviate the agony, until my younger self draws a snub-nosed revolver and puts a bullet in my brain. I feel the crack of bone ripping membranes, the pressure of the bullet drilling through my skull and bursting out the base of my neck. And then I wake again. The previous horror fresh in my mind. I try to scream, but my body is still not my own. I want to draw rapid, panic breaths, to curl up in a ball and mewl, but cannot. I remain a helpless victim to my own silence. Shrill laughter emanates from everywhere and nowhere, from deep in my mind. "Creature, stop this madness!" I couldn't say it, only think it. The words come out wet and desperate.
Let's just enjoy the ride for a bit longer, shall we?
I push my thought towards the Jackknife Man, pleading, but the torture continues. A blade to the gut. A shot to the kneecap. each and every finger broken in succession, an ear sliced off, an eye sizzling from a hot iron rod. All of this, plus countless other deaths, my dignity and sanity flee, leaving me in a whimpering, impotent mess. I wake from a gruesome death involving dismemberment, a mark that I had mangled for personal reasons. Mercifully, the Jackknife Man speaks, breaking the cycle that nearly broke my mind.
Well, what do we think? Time to call it quits? Or should we keep going?
Stop! Please, stop!
Are you sure? The best part is the end. Because we go back to the beginning. So many subtleties to discover. We can go on and on and on. New, exciting nuances each and every time. What do you say?
Despair sucks the marrow from my bones, leaving me hollow, powerless. I'll do anything. Just make it stop. Please, make it stop.
I can.
I feel his grin burning just behind my consciousness.
But there is a price.
My soul, perhaps? I don't know if I even have one to give. Anything, I will pay it. The Jackknife Man lets out a wistful sigh.
Ah, well, it was fun while it lasted. But business is business.
I snap back to the conference room, the Jackknife Man grinning before me, something hungry in the expression this time. The knife flips open and closed in his hand, no longer lodged in my forehead.
You possess such singular talent, my friend. Price is only the tools of your trade.
His mouth stretches wider still.
I won't lie to you. Those tools will fetch a handsome sum where I come from. But the price is fair, unless you wish to continue our little game.
I can see the avarice written on his face. Whatever his price, those all too human eyes convince me he will uphold his end of the bargain. Were I in my right mind, I would have pushed back, asked questions, considered my position more carefully. As it is, though I can only reflect on the anguish I had just escaped, I will not return. Cannot. Make the exchange, demon, and leave me in peace. His grin deepens, slathering, sadistic. His dark-skinned hand continues to hold me fast as the other hand goes to work. 4 sharp lances of pain, and it's over. A pittance compared to the lifetime of torture I had just endured. I do not see him leave, nor do I see the reaction of those around me as I stumble into the hospital sometime later. I do, however, hear the gasps of horrors as I trip over the chair and fall to the linoleum. Unable to grab anything to steady myself, the doctor informs me the blood loss is surprisingly minimal, but it isn't the loss of blood that disturbs me. Eventually, the authorities come. I am now serving out a multitude of terms, awaiting my execution date. Recording this memoir has proven difficult, but I have managed, given that time is all I have now. I hope that my experiences will serve as a warning. Should this creature or someone of his ilk decide to come for you, the Jackknife Man will likely not be a suitable name. Rest assured, whatever the trinket is dredged up from your past, it is the key to something so much worse than an unwanted memory. In the darkness of my world, I live the reciprocal memories of the crimes over and over again, and long for the day when I will die for the last time.
This has been a Morbid Forest production, and on this week's episode you've heard The Jackknife Man, written by E.R. Collier, with narration by Ron Hyatt as your narrator and Shawn Moreau as the Jackknife Man. Our theme music this season is The Shadows by Nandi Bushhill. Story editing and audio production by Naomi Richards. Music and sound effects provided by Epidemic Sound and Mew. And don't forget to check out our show notes to check out more of E.R. Collier's work. Follow us on X or Twitter if you're old school, Instagram, Blue Skies, Tumblr, and Discord, and Threads to stay up to date on all the happenings within the forest. Interested in more morsels of the forest? and join our Patreon. As a faithful traveler, you'll receive exclusive access to ad-free, early episode releases and bonus content for only $3 a month. We just released our second bonus story for our travelers and still have one more to go for our faithful travelers. And if you want that exclusive deal, go ahead and head to patreon.com/themorbidforest. Love what you're hearing? Then leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Reviews and ratings help us reach more travelers out there, just like you. And as a reminder, travelers, we only have 4 more episodes until our season finale, and our extra special guest joins us. Again, I can't even express to you guys how excited I am to have this voice actor work with us. And I know you guys will just die to hear their voice. Speaking of stories, if you're interested in hearing your story on season 6, send it over to themorbidforest@gmail.com. And with that, we'll see you next week, travelers, on The Morbid Forest.